Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today is Monday, December 6, 2021. We welcome you to the December meeting of the Milford Board of Aldermen. Please join me as we salute our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, will you please take the roll?
Alderman Archiola.
Present.
Alderman Beatty.
Present.
Alderman Broster.
Present.
Alderman Casey.
Here.
Alderman Gurman.
Here.
Alderman Genentasio.
Here.
Alderman Hardiman.
Alderman Hardiman would like to be excused, Madam Secretary.
Alderman Harla. Alderman Marlowe.
Here.
Alderman Moffett.
Here.
Alderman Pacelli.
Here.
Alderman Parente.
Here.
Alderman Vitro. Alderman Vitale.
Here.
Alderman Willis.
Here.
14 present.
14 present, we do have a quorum. Next portion of the meeting is devoted to public comment. Statements are strictly limited to the legislative function of the Board of Aldermen. Please use every effort to limit public speaking to the permissible business of the Board of Aldermen. The time limit granted to each speaker should be 3 minutes. Residents, taxpayers, and electors may address the board at this time. The board encourages speakers not to express derogatory, insensitive, or offensive statements, or to encourage personal attacks against individuals. In order to allow everyone an opportunity to speak, I'd ask that everyone please limit their comments to 3 minutes. Anyone wishing to address the board can do so at this time.
Good evening, Board. Nice to see you all on this beautiful December evening. Just want to bring to all of your attention the fact that I have meetings for my job network twice a month over at the Egan Center in Milford.
Sir, excuse me, could you state your name and address for the record, please?
Absolutely, would be happy to. Alex Shawarowski, 223 Broadway, Apartment 3, Milford, Connecticut, 06460. Okay. I run a job network over at the Egan Center in Milford. It's great. Do a lot of great work. Helped over about 1,000 people since I started it. For the last over a year or so, we've been at the Egan Center holding meetings twice a month. We had our meeting last week. I have meetings twice a month. Our first meeting of the month was on December 1st at 7 p.m. I entered the building for our meeting, and when I entered the room, I was shocked to find out the room was 54 degrees. When I asked the custodian if he was able to adjust the thermostat, he told me no. I'm not quite sure why that is. He told me he doesn't even have a key. Other people expressed to me how cold the building was that evening. I hope this is something that the board can address, or if they cannot address it, please forward it to the appropriate parties. We do a lot of great work in Milford. All we're asking for is a space that's comfortable to use twice a month for about 90 minutes for each of our 2 meetings. Appreciate your time. Thank you again. Have a great evening.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else wishing to address the board at this time? Seeing none, Alderman Harla, agenda item number 3, consideration of minutes of the regular meeting. Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Harla, agenda item number 4, consideration of minutes of the special organizational meeting held on November 16th, 2021.
Second that? Sorry. to make a motion in consideration of the minutes of the special organizational meeting held on November 16th, 2021.
Second the motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Chairman's report. Hope everybody had a happy and healthy Thanksgiving, and looking forward to the Christmas and
Mr. Chair.
Hanukkah and holidays coming up, and New Year's, because we won't be meeting until after New Year's. I don't have anything else, so we'll go on to agenda item number 6.
Mr.
Mayor's-
Chair.
What? Alderman Vitale.
Good evening, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure about what I'm going to say is in your report or should be unfinished business, but I'd like to refer to our aldermanic rules in page 4, number 8, and on page 5. I think we did not adhere to the Personnel Committee. The people on the Personnel Committee last session, Chairman Vitro, you were chair of the Personnel Committee, Anthony Sutton, who was the majority leader, and Tony Genatossi, who is the minority leader. This year, in the rules state that the Personnel Committee shall consist of the chairman of the Board of Aldermen, who shall be chairman of the Personnel Committee, the majority leader of the Board of Aldermen, and the minority leader of the Board of Aldermen. But this year, it's not that, so I think there has to be a readjustment.
Are you speaking of the appointments to that committee?
Yes.
We're going to address that under committee reports, Alderman Vitale.
Okay, thank you.
Agenda item number 6, Mayor's report and recommendations. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I hope everyone had a terrific Thanksgiving holiday. I know that we had good weather for the foreign law football game. I know that we've had a lot of good holiday events as we start off a festive holiday season. And I know that everybody is preparing for all of those seasonal activities in preparation for Christmas and New Year's. I want to wish everybody a safe time of year. And with respect to the agenda, I respectfully request your consideration and action on those items tonight, just 2, items 8A and 8B. And if you have any questions throughout the course of the meeting, don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, item number 7. There is no unfinished business. Agenda item number 8, moving on to new business, Alderman Harla. Agenda item number 8A.
Item number 8A, the Board of Aldermen approval is requested for the attached master services and purchasing agreement between Axion and Milford Police Department, and to authorize the mayor, city attorney, and chief of police to take all steps necessary, including the signing of all documents to effectuate said agreement.
Second the motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Alderman Giannattasio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening to the members of the board. I see our police chief, Chief Mello, in the audience. If you could please approach the podium. I do have a question in regards to this agreement.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Chief Mello. Thank you for being here tonight to take our questions. I guess first and foremost, I am familiar with the agreement. I know that this board has obviously taken up this business before, prior to, but I guess what concerns me is I don't see any cost factors in this agreement, and there's nothing indicating what it cost the last time we effectuated this agreement, and do you know what the anticipated cost would be?
Sure, absolutely. So the contracts go on a 5-year plan, and there's about 3 vendors that are in this space. Before you can provide this equipment, you have to meet the standards set by the Post Council. So there's about 3 vendors that can fit that bill. We contracted 5 years ago with Axon to deliver hardware, peripherals, the software back end, and And that contract was about $168,000. Now, when you look at the budget, you won't see $168,000 because it was paid for, it was split up when it was billed. And so this contract now, the cost I'm going to give you in this contract not only includes the new devices, the new hardware, the new peripherals, the new back-end software with additional features. It also includes the new tasers. So we had equipment that lasted for 5 years. The price was set on the 5-year contract, and it was split over 5 years. That included cost of equipment, again, peripherals. It also included maintenance costs and data storage costs, because we store we do cloud service for our storage. There's an enormous amount of data, especially now, especially under the Police Accountability Bill, which went into effect of last July, where every police officer that's in the field has to record just about everything. And so I'm glad that we made the decision not to do local storage, but to go to cloud storage, because there's so much data out there, and data that needs to be retained for quite a long period of time, depending on the event. So let me give you the cost that you're looking for. So the total cost was $169 was the total cost for under the 5-year contract, the previous contract. By the way, that first year on that previous contract, as I recall, part of it was reimbursed by the state. The new contract for the first year is $225,000. That's year 1. Year 2 through 5 is $268,000. Now, let me explain the difference as it's been explained to us. So when looking at this contract, it's certainly a lot of money, and it's a significant increase. Those costs are the costs. And unfortunately, Axon is not negotiating in those costs. They are the major player in this country, and they have tens of thousands of applications around the country. This new software, it's not only the advanced equipment, which they don't support the equipment we have. That contract runs out December 10th. We have to buy new cameras. We have to buy new peripherals, which are mounts and chargers and so forth. They also offer a new back-end piece, and that back-end piece is a software that that manages and allows us to redact, catalog, and retain the different categories of video. It also allows us to share the video with other law enforcement partners like the prosecutors. In addition to that, it also provides the data storage, and it provides unlimited space. Let me explain what this system does that the other system doesn't do. This offers streaming features, and no other vendor in the space can do that. Now, we've been asking for streaming video for years, 25 years, with body cams. They tried it with body cams. They had a problem with latency and the size of the packets. Axon has just come out with this new equipment that allows us to be able to see what the officer sees in the field. No one else is doing that. For instance, right now with my phone or the dispatch center or the supervisors or the managers or someone in a command post, we can see what all those officers see. And so that's extremely important, because before we didn't get that data until probably the next shift. We would see it after the fact. It allows agencies and supervisors and managers to be able to deploy resources to know what officers are doing in the field. And it's also important in terms of accountability of what officers are doing out there. And that's something I think that has significant value, and it's reflected in the cost. The software also does something a little bit different, where it allows us to track officers in real time. We know we have GPS tracking, but where GPS fails or where it's spotty, this will use cellular technology, LTE technology, to allow us to see where officers are. It does a couple other things. This system now is integrated with TASER. So the TASERs are all new. So not only do we have to get rid of all the old cameras, which are obsolete, we have to get rid of all the old TASERs. And we have to, the TASERs are now integrated with body cams. You pull your TASER out, that body cam goes off, whether you turn it on or not. Everyone's body camera goes off within a 30-foot range. It's extremely important for a variety of reasons. In stressful conditions, officers often, or from time to time, will forget to turn on their camera. Now, when a camera doesn't go on, what we often hear is, you didn't turn your camera on because you were involved in something you don't want people to see. Well, in fact, these unpredictable events, sometimes officers forget. They forget to turn their radios on, they forget their keys, just like all of us. What this does is it integrates with the TASER, integrates with the body cam, and all that data is stored in this evidence.com cloud storage. So for those reasons, and there's a few other things that it does in terms of providing metrics and providing real-time data, that probably is really not important to you folks, but important to us as we audit what we do and we audit what officers do. There are other players in the space, and we looked at them. But we had committed 5 years ago to Axon, which was then TASER. Actually, we committed to TASER 15 years ago. One of the first departments in the state, there was 2 of us that got body cams, and no one was talking about body cams, and nobody wanted to pay for them. We used to share 12 cameras. Now, everybody has to have a camera, including myself. That means that we have to buy more cameras, because while everybody in the field had a camera, now we all have to have cameras. So we're buying 12 additional pieces of equipment, which is reflected here in the costs. The old system, it functioned well, but it's no longer available. And that system is parallel with a lot of the systems that are out there. So we have cloud storage. We have Axon storage. We can't get rid of that. It's proprietary software. We have thousands and thousands of videos. Some are 90-day deletion schedule, some a year, some 5 years, some 10 years, some for life, many for life, many for 10 years, many for the life of the case. Because that data is stored there, we would, if we went to one of the less expensive options, which, by the way, does not have the features that I gave you, and I think the features alone, if you're talking about the sophistication of our police department and how we want our officers to perform, and in terms of the officer safety component, I've included that because that's what I value, and I believe that's what you value as well. But under the old system, we would have a separate data storage piece. So we could save some money by using another system, but we would then have to spend additional money to maintain the Axon cloud storage. I'm not saying that that isn't where we'll go someday. I think we're one of the vendors that can catch up and can provide the value that this system has. We'll hopefully do it for less. Hopefully the space will be more competitive, and we can look for the most efficient vendor. But right now, this is not the cheapest, but it's, I think, what we need and what our officers deserve.
Thank you, Chief Mello, for that very detailed explanation. And I do appreciate the technology as well, and I do agree in some instances it can definitely save a life. So it's imperative that we go into that direction and have the infrastructure in place. So, and I understand the fact that this is the only vendor, so to speak, that has this cutting edge technology, and we're, so to speak, already married to that vendor from our last agreement with the existing infrastructure that we have. And the fact that we can put it up in the cloud, I think it's more secure up there, and we'll be able to store and bank more, video. And with the additional cameras, one for yourself as well, I think, is also an add-on benefit. So I'm in favor of this. I guess my only question would be left is maybe at some point down the road, if there was an opportunity for some kind of a regionalization. I know that you mentioned we were one of the first police departments in the state through your leadership to introduce the body camera. If we can partner maybe with some other departments to kind of keep this vendor at bay. Or to your other point, that hopefully as years continue, there will be more opportunities with other companies that have this same specific technology. But again, I do support this, and I thank you for being here to take my questions. Thank you.
It's a very good point. I just want to elaborate on that point a little bit. There's been a lot of discussions at the state to come up with a statewide storage system because there are, like I said, three different vendors in the space, and they're all trying to find their niche. I think Axon has, and I think that's why they're so expensive. I think that will happen because there's been some serious discussion. I think it needs to happen. I think as these costs continue to go up, it's going to be very difficult for municipalities to maintain this, and at the same time maintain the dash cams. Again, all these things were, these are part of the police accountability bill, and they're legislated, so we really don't have a choice. We have a choice what vendor we can use. We don't have a choice whether we're going to do it or not, though, but thank you for that comment.
Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Chief. It just seems like it's a monopoly and we have nowhere else to go but that, and that, so be it. But my question is, how long is the data stored for so that we could revisit that data? At what particular point in time does it expire? Does it have an expiration date?
Right, so if you look at the records of retention laws, and then you look even deeper into the body-worn camera policy, it details how long the data has to be stored. So it's a minimum. For routine data, if I had a body cam on right now, that's a 90-day storage. So most of the material that's being recorded, in 90 days it's gone. You can redact it. And every piece of video that an officer takes, every event has to be cataloged. We spend an enormous amount of time managing data. The officers spend an enormous amount of time. But anything that of an evidentiary value has to be kept for either the life of the case, or if there's an arrest, or there's an outstanding event like a warrant or something along those lines. Depending on the records of retention on that case, it may be a year, maybe 5 years, it may be 10 years. Much of it is life, especially in some cases, especially when we're talking about serious felonies like a homicide or something like that, or personnel matters. We're keeping those for, and a lot of these are personnel matters. In fact, one of the benefits of the cameras, and we said this 12 years ago, 15 years ago, when people make complaints about police officers, and they do now probably more than ever, those cameras are amazing. If you don't want to come over, I'll show you a whole catalog of people that made complaints, and when you look at the cameras, it's not there. It also has a lot of training value because we do see things where, okay, maybe could this have been done better? And the answer to that always is yes. And so we can use those to help get better as well. So those kind of things we'll keep for an extended period of time because they're personnel issues.
Just a follow-up. So is it your responsibility or the department's responsibility to inform Axon that you need more time with this or you need a year? How does that work?
Sure, that's a good question. The data, the back-end software, when an officer goes to an event, and this is what they'll, again, spend a good part of their day, cataloging each video. And then depending on what code they use, the software knows where that retention schedule is. And then there's somebody else in records that basically works full-time managing data and to make sure that data is retained, because it can slip through. If someone doesn't catalog it correctly, that data can be automatically deleted. So there's some checks and balances with that.
So it's a code-effective kind of thing that you have internally. So thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Harla.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Chief, thank you for the presentation and information. I think I might have missed early on when you talked about the elevator in pricing, 169 to 225 to 268,000. Was that just software services, or was that including some hardware as well?
It is, well, it's all new hardware.
Okay.
Everybody's getting new hardware. We're adding 12 additional pieces, and that means that not only are we adding 12 additional pieces of hardware, the associated peripherals that come with that, but we also have to have a cloud storage account. So every officer has a cloud storage account. The courts have a cloud storage account because we give them an account as well. We have to pay for each account.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Or Alderman Parente.
Sure, through you, Chairman. Hi, Chief. Any information for us about the data in terms of how the company can utilize the data or not utilize it, or once there's a termination of contract, what happens to the data that they have of yours, of ours?
Sure.
Thank you.
Good question. We own the data. The question will be how to convert that data because it's stored in a proprietary software. And that's something that other departments, including we, were looking at as well. What would the cost be and who will convert that data onto whatever new system we take on? That may have to happen someday, and I think the cost would, there would be certainly a considerable cost, but we have to follow where this goes in terms of where these prices go. I'm hoping, as we just talked about that we'll come up with a universal system that through the state, or as they start to become competitive in features, we'll see some price adjustments. But it is our data.
Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Moffett.
Yeah, I just have a couple. Good evening, Chief. Just got a couple of questions for you. First of all, the contract states that Axon can send our data to third-party partners. Do we know who those third-party partners are?
We designate who those parties are. And we share those with other agencies all the time that are on the same platform, and we share them with the courts.
Good.
Any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Before you go, Chief, I just want to congratulate you and thank you for the beautiful ceremony you did on the Milford Police Department Academy. I thoroughly enjoyed that. That was a great show.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Very welcome.
Good night, everybody.
And thank you for
Thank you.
answering all our
Thank you.
questions.
Yeah.
Next item on the agenda is Agenda 8B, Alderman Harlow.
Agenda item 8B, the Board of Aldermen. Approval is requested for the attached Sea-Power Master Service Agreement and ISO-NE addendum for on-peak demand resource between Earthwise Global Technology LLC, DBA as Sea-Power, and the City of Milford. And to authorize the mayor, city attorney, public works director to take all steps necessary, including the signing of all documents to effectively said agreement.
Second the motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Alderman Giannattasio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mayor Blake. Mayor Blake, can you give us some background information on this agreement?
Thank you, Alderman Giannattasio. To you and the board, as you know, the City of Milford recently completed a long build-out of a new microgrid system. The building that we're presently in, City Hall, Parsons, Senior Center, the Tolson Building, Harborside Middle School are all part of the microgrid infrastructure network. We got an approximate $3 million grant from the state's Department of Environmental and Energy and utilized that money to build this resiliency system. One of the components of this system is that there is a 400 kW generator, a CHP, continuous heat and power unit, as part of that. Our Assistant Public Works Director, Stephen Johnson, is here to give us some of the details, but now that that program is up and running and we are on the grid, we have the ability to enter into agreement for peak demands and to realize some additional value just by completing some paperwork. It's not a ton of money. It's approximately $95,000 over the course of the next 10 years or the 10 years. But it is money that if we execute this agreement, we will be eligible for. So, Steve, do you have any additional details about this agreement that you can share with the board?
Yes, good evening, everybody. As Mayor Blake said, this is an opportunity to take advantage of the microgrid system that we have in place and that is currently powering this building that we're in tonight. The 400 kW generator is, during the winter time, providing all of the power that's needed to power those facilities and providing excess power that is being exported out to UI that we are benefiting from another program. During the summertime, we are actually producing that 400 kilowatts of power plus importing some additional power because of the demands from summer air conditioning on the system. So what this program is really it's a rebate program for distributed energy. And it's based on the 6 New England states, the ISO New England states, that is recognizing that we are reducing our demand at certain peak hours, and that there's a benefit for that. The company C-Power is a sole source provider of these energy credits. They go out and during auctions provide bid on the actual power that they are going to be purchasing from the ISO New England. And as a part of that, and monitoring our power demands during those peak energy demands during winter and then in summer hours, they have projected a rebate over that 10-year period, like Mayor Blake said, of approximately $95,000. It's just one other aspect of additional benefits that this system can bestow upon Milford, as well as providing some of the resiliency benefits that this system will be providing and has already.
Just to follow up through you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mayor Blake. Good evening, Steve, and thank you as well. Can you just define peak hours?
Yeah, very good question. So the peak hours during the winter are defined between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m., weekdays, non-holiday. And what they are is they're monitored during the months of December, January, February, and March. The summer peak hours are defined as 1 p.m. to 5 p.m., and they are monitored and measured during the months of June, July, and August. The power that we are consuming during those peak hours are what are used to determine our benefits the following year going forward. The first 3 years of the program, those costs are fixed into the agreement. The following 7 years, those estimates are projected and what they've done based on their estimates that equate to about the $95,000 range right at this point.
Well, thank you, Steve. And as the mayor indicated, it's not a lot of money, but it all adds up at the end of the day. So we appreciate the effort. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Beatty.
Through you, Mr. Chairperson, I have another question for Steve on another topic related to something tonight. Want to ask it now, or do you want to bring this to conclusion? Okay, thank you. We heard, thank you, Steve, and for being here tonight and always being well-informed and speaking from that base. The public testimony that was giving tonight, I know that you're correct at the Margaret Egan Center and there was a temperature thing. It might have been just a scheduling issue, and certainly I have complete faith that that'll be corrected. And we welcome public testimony, but I'm wondering, and this is for all the aldermen and our constituents, what would be the best way that that person could have gotten that resolved rather than have to wait to the next aldermanic meeting, unless they chose to?
Excuse me, point of order. The motion on the floor and the discussion on the motion, we had some other discussion. I think it's not relevant at this point, Mr. Chair.
I asked permission beforehand, if you heard, into the mic.
I have some other questions regarding the motion on the floor.
Alderman Beatty has the floor, Alderman Vitale. Let's have a little respect for Alderman Beatty.
I have most respect, but it's a point of order that is not relevant to the motion.
I heard you. I'm letting her speak.
Oh, really? Okay, thank you.
I asked permission to speak off the motion while we had Assistant Director Johnson in front of us. Is there a better mechanism to get that, something like that, taken care of more quickly? I know we have the web page, and is that mechanism, a process not working so that we advise our constituents? Is this the best way to get something immediate resolved?
Thank you, Alderman Beatty. I've given my business card to the gentleman that shared the concerns and the issues of the temperature. We will address it. The Public Works strives every day to hear any issues or requests, complaints, something like that. If it came through our office, we would certainly address that through our Building Maintenance Division. I will look into it, ask him to give me a call tomorrow so I can get to the bottom of it.
I know you'll follow up, but do you think that he didn't, this is the first time that this is brought to the attention?
I'm not aware, I'm not aware of it, but
All right,
I will
thank
look
you.
into it in detail.
And thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Gurman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Steve, for your presentation. Question, so the microgrid, is that been in operation or is it just starting? Because I know we approved that years ago.
Yes, so we've gone through a series of build-outs, as the mayor described. We've received various stages of permission to operate, going back to May of this year. And then we received final permission to operate through DEP in September of this year. We had to demonstrate a series of capabilities both to UI earlier in the year, which we did, and then finally to UI. The system has been approved by DEP, and we're in the final weeks of project closeout and reporting on the project to DEP.
So right now, all these buildings are running off that microgrid?
Yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So, and it's the only time when the CHP is not providing power is when we have any scheduled maintenance to the generator, which we obviously schedule during blue sky days without any threat to loss of power, so.
All right, and just, Mr. Chairman, through you, are we going to see some kind of report on energy savings through this microgrid at some point?
Yes, absolutely. Those, since we've just really been in the process, the consultants that we're working with on this project are working with UI, with the contractors who put the system in place to get us all of the data that we need to confirm the projected savings that this system's providing. We are looking to have that data over the next few weeks to a month or so. And as soon as we have that, I know Director Saley and myself we want to come back and share that with you to show the benefits and demonstrate what this is providing for the benefits for the city.
Terrific, thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Marlowe.
Good evening, through you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Steve. Just a couple quick questions on this. Again, as with the Axon that was talked about through the police, what are the costs associated with C-Power? Is it strictly them a percentage of savings?
Right.
Is that how they work this?
Yeah, and the information you have in the packet has been updated. In your packet, I think it was referring to approximately $82,000 in savings. Director Chris Saley negotiated with C-Power and leveraged some of the resources within the city, not only with the city, but also the Board of Ed, to recognize the value of that and increase the percentage rebate back to the city. There are some minimal monthly costs associated with doing the monitoring for metering. One of the things that we anticipated when we installed this system was to put in some of the what we call pulse metering in the buildings that can actually measure the amount of electricity that we're importing and generating it into the building, as well as exporting. So we have complete capability of recording that. It's just a question of capturing it and formatting in a way to address these program requirements.
Thank you. Just another question. Does C-Power come out and tour and do an assessment of each facility before this is entered into? And do they make recommendations? And do you see anything that they would recommend that would be a cost to us at some point?
Yes, thank you. We already met with them. Their representative was out on site. We had some preliminary discussions before they came down. We had been advised that this program was made financial sense to the city. They came in, reviewed our system, our infrastructure. They're in the process of reviewing. They've been provided all of the demand usage that we had on an historical basis. So the agreement that's in place is based on all that information, both the data we've already provided plus the on-site visit that they provide, and we met with them here along with Director Saley.
Thank you. One other question, Mr. Chairman. Again, on this, on the sheet here, on the on-peak demand response, I only see the Parsons complex listed. Is that the only one that would be involved in the savings for the demand usage?
Yes, so Parsons is the central point from which we affect our own electric generation. So the Parsons is recognized as the main facility where the power is generated, which is where the CHP is located. However, the CHP is powering those other buildings that Mayor Blake talked about. It's powering all of Parsons. It's powering all of City Hall. It's powering all of Harborside Middle School. It's powering all of the Milford Senior Center. And then in the event that the River Park Apartments building loses power and their primary generator does not power the facility, we provide backup power on an unattended basis.
And another question, through you, Mr. Chair. When the demand is, and whoever the power company says, hey, we need you to cut back, how does that actually happen? What services, or not services, or what part of the infrastructure do you cut back to attain those savings?
So right now, this program, my understanding, is a reflection of what we are actually using in our current demand, and are reducing our demand off the 6 New England state grid. So this is separate from other potential programs that we are also looking at in terms of demand reduction during a potential brownout situation, which could be addressed through other mechanisms, including like the batteries system that we have in place.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Vitale?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Steve, thank you for the explanation. In everything that you had indicated and said, putting it very succinctly, so when we sell in the wintertime and we have to purchase in the summertime, did I hear that correctly? In some instances, is it worth all of what we're going through, and is it to our advantage?
Yeah, so in terms of the financial benefits that we're accruing as part of running this system that we're doing anyways, all it's really incumbent upon us is to report what that demand is during those peak hours. And then that demand translates into revenue capacity that is paid to us through rebates based on our power usage. And they average that over our peak demands during the wintertime, those peak hours of 5 to 7, weekdays during the wintertime through December, January, February, March. So they average out what our peak demand is during those periods, and then they use that as a basis for calculating our rebate for the rest of the year during the winter months. For the summer months, that peak demand is rated through the hours of 1 p.m. to 5 p.m., June, July, and August.
So simply, are we paying anything on top of that? Very little?
Very little. There's some basic, I think there's a $200 charge per month for some equipment, and then there's another, I think, a $40 charge I saw in the agreement. Again, this is something Chris was talking with him specifically on. He was intending to be here, but he's out of town right now, couldn't be here.
Just to follow up. So will we ever be able to, do you think we'll ever get to that point where we're not paying anything and it'll be a wash? Or we'll never get to that point?
I think we will be recognizing some expenses to maintain the system and to maintain it going forward. But I think the offset for that is the benefits that we're going to be saving in our reduced electrical cost that was approximately 18 cents a kilowatt hour before, and now is down in the 7-cent range that we're looking at projected. I'm waiting to get confirmation on that, but it's a significant savings throughout for the city, for the downtown.
Thank you, Steve.
Alderman Browser.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Steve, thank you so much. And I know that we've talked a lot about the cost savings, which are fantastic, but I think what might be getting a little lost here, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it, is the significant resiliency benefits of microgrids and the tremendous amount of work that's been going on statewide to get these put into place. Just touch on that a little bit. In addition, do you mind, do you think there would be a benefit to bringing more of a microgrid footprint into Milford and other coastal communities?
So Milford is, as a result of a couple of different initiatives, The microgrid is one that followed Superstorm Sandy with DEP as an opportunity to become more resilient as a city, recognizing the buildings that we've already talked about. This system that is installed and running right now has another component that is somewhat unique as a microgrid. And that is we have, in addition to the 400 kilowatt generator, we also have a 125 kilowatt battery system that's operating. So every day, that battery is programmed to discharge during peak hours, and that power that's being provided back to the grid, to UI, is clean power. And that's a premium level of power that we are also benefiting from in terms of UI. Going back to the other question that was raised earlier, one of the benefits going forward in terms of a demand reduction during a potential energy brownout, there are other programs that we're looking at too that would give us the opportunity to say within X number of hours, well, you need to reduce your demand by X amount. And that way we can be looking to monitor the energy in the buildings, but also use that stored power and export that to help provide some of those benefits to the city. That battery integrated into the microgrid is unique, really to date. Some of the other existing microgrids that DEEP has funded do not include that integrated battery to the level that we did here. And that unfortunately also complicated some of the testing integration, but it has proved out to be working very, very well. In fact, there's been some other systems that Director Saley and the city has undertaken, including the fuel cell that we have operating down at the wastewater plant. That again is another benefit of providing power not only to the Beaverbrook wastewater plant, but to other buildings. The microgrid has a series of other beneficial accounts that are providing lower cost power for the library, some of the street lighting accounts, et cetera. So all of that will be incorporated and be able to report it back to the board here once we have those final numbers.
Thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Archiolo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being with us today, Steve. I just have a quick question. I apologize if it was answered previously, but this predates my time on the board, but when was the C-Power grid originally installed?
Well, the microgrid, it goes back into back in the time frame of approximately 2014 when the agreements and everything were started. The actual installs in terms of hardware began in 2020 when equipment was being placed. It was a series of other requirements in terms of getting all of those buildings interconnected. All the buildings are powered from the basement of Parsons now. And once that power became available through Parsons, disconnecting from UI, so we're feeding all the power from the microgrid. There was a series of system integration that needed to be done in testing. The import of power and providing power to the facilities has been seamless. Some of the challenges that ran into play when the UI system no longer was providing power to the city and the microgrid would need to take over. And so there was a lot of controls and testing that needed to be done that we went through exhaustive testing to make sure that that's reliable. It's now proven itself on a couple of different situations where we've lost power and this system now provides continuous power to the facilities once we transition over. There's a short blackout period when that occurs.
Thank you, and I just have one follow-up question, if that's all right. Do you have any idea what the estimated viable lifespan of the microgrid is?
Good question, yes. The whole system is based on a 20-year projected lifespan of the system.
Very good, thank you very much.
Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Gurman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and back to Steve. I assume this microgrid is powered by gas, is that correct?
That's correct, natural gas.
So, and is there capabilities of tying solar into it at some point?
Yes, there is. We've actually, as part of the system design, There is a photovoltaic component involved with this system, and the system is basically solar-ready. So if we were to install solar that made financial sense, the system could accommodate that as part of this overall infrastructure plan.
And one more follow-up, Mr. Chairman. And I know in the Parsons, we've switched all lighting to LEDs for additional savings, which is a huge benefit. Have we done that over at the school and other places? I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, the schools have undertaken a program of energy efficiencies, as has the city. I think there's been some low-hanging fruit that we've all accomplished, and I'm sure there's some potential other reductions that we can be looking at. That's one of the things that Director Saley, I know, is focused on in terms of energy, as simple as turning the heat down when we leave the office and things like that. So,
Terrific, thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for answering all our questions and that great presentation.
thank you.
Agenda item number 8B, Alderman Harlow. I'm sorry. Agenda item number 9, there is no new business. Moving on to budget memo transfers, Alderman Harlow. Agenda item number 10.
First, number 1 and number 2, Fund number 1005 and number 2812 for financial year 2022.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Alderman Giannattasio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, through you, Mr. Chairman, to our Finance Director, Peter Aradisi. Good evening, Peter. Can you just walk us through these budget memo transfers? Just so I'm clear, I guess the first one is for $5,000, and then reading in our packet, the second one is for $1,084,525. Am I reading that correctly?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Alderman Giannattasio. Actually, to clarify, the 5,000 is the original budget for the contingency account, so that's the starting point. And it's this contingency account, we're not using the 5,000 per se. It acts as a pass-through account for these transfers, so that it goes into that account and then comes out to go to the accounts that you see that need funding.
Thank you. Can you clarify then for us this evening what the dollar amount, the total dollar amount in budget memo transfers is that's before us tonight?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Alderman. The total amount for the wage, retroactive wage adjustments and current year wage adjustments for the general fund would be the, if you look at the bottom of the page 1, transfer 1, the $1,046,761 is the total transfer, and you would just have to back out the $12,000 coming from the police department for training, and that amount would be the total for the general fund wage transfers, and then the $32,764 is related to the wages connected to the sewer fund for the wastewater employees that are in MSA.
Okay, Peter, do you bring these transfers to the agenda? Is that part of your?
Yes, that's part of my responsibility, is that I have to obtain the figures from our payroll division and see what the retroactive wage adjustments were, and then factor in the current year wage increase from the time when I calculate until June 30th of 22 to make sure that we properly fund the payments.
Okay, I guess for me, I recall that when these come before us, the way that it reads in the agenda, it spells out the specific dollar amount. And that's why I want to take the time to have you kind of walk us through, and I understand, that we need to back out certain numbers, but I just feel like it should be read, first and foremost, and then we can refer to it, in our packet rather than having to do the math. And that's what I'm accustomed to, and I don't know what changed here, why it's presented to us in this fashion, but that's why I asked you to answer the question. So I understand the explanation. I appreciate it. I don't know if this is going to be like this moving forward.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Alderman Gennatasio. From my recollection and the way we've done it in the past, this is how I've always done it, and how it was done. Sometimes there are cases where there are no other transfers. In this case, we just had that 12,000 related for the police department need, but this is how we've done it in the past. I have to state that for the record.
Okay, all right. Well, that's fair. Maybe I just didn't notice it, but to me, when you spell out these funds, I would think that it might be best practice to, say exactly what we're transferring from one fund to the other. That's just, my observation. But this retroactive, this is based on the contract, the update, the results of the fire contract?
It's the results of two contracts. The first is the MSA, which I believe expired June 30th, 2019. And when it was renegotiated, we needed to adjust for the fiscal years 20, 21, and 22 year to date. And the fire contract was also settled, and I believe that one expired in 2020, if I'm not mistaken, and so we had to adjust for the fire employees. What is not included here is the adjustments for Chief Ito and the Assistant Fire Chief that follow the non-rep ordinance that this board approved in August. Those adjustments were made after this transfer was approved by the Board of Finance, so those will be upcoming in future transfers.
Okay, and through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to defer to the city attorney. Good evening, Attorney Burcham. So this is what we need to do based on the findings in the contract, is allocate the retroactive pay?
Mr. Chair, through you to Alderman Giantasio, yes, this is what you need to do. This is what we discussed and this board approved, the retroactive wages as we set forth in those general wage increases.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Either the mayor, Peter, or city attorney, when we get involved with future CBAs, in the mayor's, in your first budget proposal, in the mayor's budget proposal, is there an anticipated for the following year, now we're talking, or for the future, is there an anticipated increase that you put into the budget somewhere so that we can not be far off from, for instance, if in doing the research and knowing what cities around whatever are giving and offering a 2%, 3% raise to their next year's negotiations, is there anywhere in the budget that you account for that in preparing for your proposal?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Alderman Vitale, yes. It is in the budget that you approve each and every year. The salary reserve account is a line item that appears that your board approves during the budget cycle. We are given recommendations for what that amount should be by our finance director, who consults with our HR department and our city attorney's office. and negotiating teams if there are open contracts. Obviously, we don't like to, in an open forum, divulge what that figure is or that number is, because like when you're playing poker, it shows your hand. But we absolutely have a set-aside amount in the salary reserve portion of the budget each year that is recommended by the HR, city attorney, and our finance director and presented to your board.
Yeah, and that would only be prudent because we couldn't be far off because of what other cities are doing with that number. But usually in our research and doing what we do, is it really close to what we anticipate? And if it is, if it's less than, what happens with that money? Where does that go, that balance of that particular thought process or that particular line item that goes, it's not a line item, but that money that would have been anticipated for a CBA agreement?
Well, if it's too little, then we have to pull from other reserve accounts within the city. If it's too much, it either stays in that reserve account until there are, if there are other open contracts, and it's ultimately reconciled. Our finance director can give you a little bit more of an explanation. But as of the last 20 years, it's been very, very close. The last 20 years that I've been around, it has been maybe not spot on, but darn close.
Not overly what we anticipate anyway, I can assume.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, yes, it's not overly stated. If anything, I'm concerned that it sometimes could be understated, and that's always a concern. But as the mayor said, we would find other accounts to pull from. But each budget year, as we work on the budget with the Board of Finance, the Board of Aldermen, and the mayor, we have that line item which you see, other wage adjustments, and that is the line item you approve each year for those contracts during that given year that are expired. So we have to figure, okay, we don't do a wage increase this fiscal year because the contract has expired and has not been settled, but we still have to budget for it on a yearly basis in anticipation of the increases being paid retroactively. So it's done each year. If all contracts were settled and we had no applicable need to budget for wage increases because they went far out into the future, then for that particular year, we would budget zero for that fiscal year. But historically, we have often had contracts that have not been settled in it far into the future.
So when we, just to follow up, so when we pay retroactively, is that amount of money that we anticipated that you proposed in that budget covering that, or is it that we have to go into reserves for that?
Through you to Alderman Vitale, that is always the aim, that the amount that we have in the reserve accounts should match and reflect what we have to pay for the retroactive payments.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is item number 11. Moving on to refunds. Alderman Harla, agenda item number 11A.
Second.
The motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Alderman Giannattasio.
I'd just like to note that it's good to get a refund. Thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Beatty?
I want the refund that Alderman Giannattasio refers to.
With no more discussion, all in favor? Any discussion? Any more discussion? With seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to agenda item number 12, special reports of standing committees. Alderman Parente, agenda item number 12A.
Thank you, Chairman. The Ordinance Committee met earlier this evening, and we voted to advance item 12A, an ordinance amending an ordinance establishing compensation of city officials and employees in the service of the City of Milford supervisors. I move to approve item 12A.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the mayor. Mr. Mayor, these are just non-reps. Is that true, or what constitutes this group of CBAs?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Alderman Vitale, yes. As you know, after we passed the MSA union contract, we recently just executed, even though your board approved the TA, the tentative agreement, back this past summer at a board meeting, but we recently executed it, and we always have a U2 ordinance that follows that for the non-reps. And this is the group of non-reps, folks that aren't part of a collective bargaining unit, they're not civil service, and they follow the schedule through the U2 ordinance for both benefits and wage schedule.
To follow up, I just find it that the police chief and fire chief are not on this?
So our ordinance is such that the police chief and I think the assistant chief follow the police union contract, and the fire chief and the assistant fire chiefs follow the fire contract.
Because I thought as a supervisor and a director of the department, they would be on this. Thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Gurman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. So when will this go into effect, Mr. Mayor?
As soon as the ordinance is ratified.
So next week, or if assuming it's voted on now, or what?
Mr. Chairman, through you, my understanding of ordinance is that once the board votes to approve, the ordinance is advertised, and there's a 10-day period. So I believe it's 10 days following the advertisement of an ordinance is when they're ultimately ratified or they go into full effect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Any other reports of any standing committee? Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if the chair is supposed to report on this or just a member of the chair, but as I reiterated before, I just think there's a mistake in the rules and not following it this year. And if I could just read on page 5, it says the Personnel Committee shall consist of the chair of the Board of Aldermen being the chair of the Personnel Committee, along with the majority and minority leaders, making up a membership of 3. Last year, in our standing committees in the last term, it was, I believe it was correct. It was Chairman Vitro and the majority and minority leader. This year, the only one that's representative of, according to the rules, is the minority leader, Tony Giannatasio, and I don't see your name, nor do I see Greg Harler's name, so I think that needs to be corrected, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Alderman Vitale, that's an oversight on my part. I apologize for that. Automatically on the Personnel Committee, it's the chairman, the majority leader, and the minority leader.
So that'll be corrected, and we'll get
I will correct it.
Another sheet indicating all the...
I will make that correction and send it out. Thank you for pointing that out. Any other reports of standing committees? Alderman Giannatasio.
Just to elaborate a little bit more on Alderman Vitale's request, Alderman Vitale does sit on the Rules Committee, as most of you do know. Alderman Vitale has also requested a meeting with the Rules Committee, and he requested a meeting the night of the organizational meeting that we had. And I think there is a member, Ward Willis is, I'm not sure if you're the chair of the Rules Committee, but it might be advantageous to meet with Alderman Vitale, because there is something else that I think would be in our best interest to address as well. And I would, respect that if you can please make the time to maybe have a meeting with the Rules Committee to discuss another request that's been brought to my attention, and I would appreciate that if you can do that. So, thank you.
Each committee has its chairman, and the chairman will decide when there's going to be a meeting. So if the other members of that committee would like to have a meeting, they would contact the chairman, and they see what they could do about setting that up. That's not up to the rest of the Board of Aldermen. That's up to the chairman of that committee. So when the Rules Committee chairman, which is Alderman Willis, decides to have a meeting, he will notify the other members of that committee.
I do understand the rules, Chairman Vitro. I'm just requesting, as a leader on this board, the minority leader, it came out of my caucus, and Mr. Vitale has, would request to have a meeting, and I think it would be best practice if the Rules Committee did meet. I'm not forcing a meeting, and I know it's at the chair's discretion. I understand that completely, but I just think in the spirit of bipartisanship, there should be a meeting. And these rules, as you know, need to be corrected, and you stated that yourself. So there's a prime example. So why not have a meeting? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Alderman Willis.
Yes, I did hear Alderman Vitale's concerns last month. Having one member of a committee requesting a meeting, to me, doesn't really constitute an immediate need to have a meeting at the present time.
Just as, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Alderman Vitale.
In all due respect, Alderman Willis, we do have a Rules Committee with, I think Scott is on it and myself, and I would imagine it would only take one who would really want a meeting, because probably that issue would have been resolved in private rather than on the floor. And so if we can keep it in private and then come and talk about what is on our mind and what changes need to be made, I think it's to our benefit. And working in the spirit of bipartisanship and, and rowing that canoe as a team and make sure there's no holes in it. So I think we have a hole in it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Alderman Willis.
Certainly, Alderman Vitale, I want to work in a bipartisan manner, and I understand what you're saying. I am not sure exactly on the rule, but usually to call a meeting, it's usually 2/3 of the members request a meeting. I'm not 100% on that, but a lot of committees that I've served on, but I'm not saying that that's definite.
Just a follow-up, there's nothing in the rules saying it has to be 2/3. It's a committee that has concerns, and I would imagine if I chaired that, if one of my members had a concern, I'd want to satisfy the concerns.
One more time, the chairman of that committee will notify the members of that committee when there's going to be a meeting. End of story.
Really?
Moving on. Any more reports of any standing committees? Seeing none, we'll move on to the special committees. Any reports of any special committees? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'll take a moment of personal privilege here and just wish my paralegal, Tony Weeks, the recording secretary, a very happy birthday. Thanks for spending your birthday with us tonight.
Hey. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Tony. You're 29, right? That's what I thought. One more time, is there a motion to adjourn? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.